Okay, now we can talk a little bit about tuning. In the snare drum section, we talked about really how to tune the snare drum, so I'm not going to discuss that. What I'd like to discuss is perhaps the intervals and the whole drum set tuning concept that is suggested. We want to try to get the snare drum to be the highest pitch. A lot of drummers tune to feel. Some drummers tune to pitches. There's a lot of different tuning concepts out there. I'll share a pitch concept with you, but basically it's like this. The snare drum is the highest pitch. The tom-tom, the mounted tom, is a medium pitch. Floor tom is lower, and then the bass drum is lower yet again. What you do want to do is create intervals. If these two drums are too close in terms of the interval, then it's not going to give you the contrast that you might want for your filling and things like that. If the snare drum is the same pitch as the tom-tom, you're going to get a horrible ring sound. It's going to just set each drum off. So you really have to pay attention to all these factors when you're tuning. I've created a kind of a jazz tuning with this kit, and these two drums are about the interval of a fourth apart. Listen to this. You all know that one. Here comes the bride. So if I were to go to a piano or a vibraphone, I believe this is maybe around the pitch of a C, and this is maybe like around the pitch of an F. Close. And then the snare drum is going to be higher yet again, so maybe a step or two higher. So if this were an F on a piano, this might be like an A. So now, I don't necessarily tune every drum to a pitch, but I have found though in my experience that this size drum, the 8x12 tom, sounds good within a pitch range. So does the floor tom, so does the snare drum. I can tell you that in a jazz setting, in a big band setting, the snare drum sounds pretty nice around the pitch of an E flat or an F. In a small group setting, the pitch comes up a little bit because you don't need that thickness. You want a little more clarity. In a rock or a funk group, sometimes the drum is really cranked up high because what they need is backbeat and crack. So I think the key to good tuning is experimentation, trying different things, and then understanding very clearly what kind of music you're going to play. I have three basic tunings. I have kind of general purpose tuning, which is pretty much middle ground. The drums feel good, they're not cranked real high. I have my jazz combo tuning. Everything comes up a couple steps. This is a little on the high side, but this is a small group tuning. If I were to play big band, stage band, I'd drop these down a little bit. And then for rock and studio work, I would drop them down even more. We want a more full-bodied sound, and we have different responsibilities and requirements for studio work or rock and roll work. Maybe some different drum heads. But think about the music you're going to play, and then think about creating a nice pitch spectrum within the kit. This works pretty well for small group, and I'd like to demonstrate in a minute some different sounds that work in other settings. But again, listen to the interval range that I've created here. I mentioned tuning to pitches, but I also did mention about feel. Some drummers tune to feel. So the key is to experiment and to try different mixtures of tight, loose, loose, tight, different combinations. Some drummers tune the top head tighter because they really want that edge and they want the tone. Some guys tune the top head looser because it feels better. The stick kind of sits in the head. I've heard it sound great both ways. So again, experiment. The top head looser than the bottom head will give you kind of a fuller sound, and the stick will kind of sit in the head a little bit more. It feels good. It doesn't feel especially good for jazz playing because you're going to want a little more reaction and a little more clarity on the drum, but it certainly feels good for some types of studio drumming. So do experiment. The relationship with the snare drum, it's generally accepted that the snare head is a lot tighter. Not a lot, but maybe a step or two tighter than the batter head. So experiment, experiment, experiment. What feels good, what sounds good.